Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your sources, maybe articles, research notes, anything you've got, and pull out those key insights.
Yeah.
Kind of a shortcut to getting really well informed. And today we're diving into a story that starts really small. Just a photo posted online by two young guys, Kesser and Steen. But this photo, it didn't just get a few likes. It basically set their village's internet on fire, caused a whole lot of anxiety in a grandmother's kitchen, and, believe it or not, led to this quite poignant run-in with a literal circus and nature. So our mission here is to unpack all that. We're going to look at the real story behind a plant often just called toxic. We'll try to separate fact from fear, especially when it comes to honey. And hopefully, through Kesser and Steen's own journey, we'll uncover a bigger lesson about, local nature and how we interact with it. Okay, let's unpack this. So picture this. Kesser and Steen, they post this photo. They call the plant legendary gift plant Engbrand beggar, which we know is Ragwort, right? Jacobaea vulgaris. And almost immediately, the online reaction in their village goes, well, the source says red hot, just instant, strong opinions flying around.
Yeah, it's funny how certain plants trigger that, especially ones labeled toxic or invasive. Our sources hint it often comes from, let's say, a less complete understanding of nature.
Right. And to be fair, ragwort isn't entirely harmless, is it?
No, absolutely not. It contains these things called pyrrolizidine alkaloids, PAs, and they are dangerous for grazing animals, particularly horses and cattle. That's well established.
And the risk gets worse somehow when it's dried.
Exactly. When it's dried in hay, the taste becomes less bitter. So the animals, they can't avoid it as easily. They might just munch it down with everything else. So the worry for livestock owners, it's real.
Which brings us straight into Oma's kitchen. So Tante Green is there, drinking tea, looking really stressed, red cheeks that did not come from the summer sun, as the source puts it.
Vivid description.
Yeah. And Kesser and Steen are there, too, phones away for once. Oma's trying to calm Tante Green down because she is convinced these plant toxins are going to end up in their honey.
Ah, the honey fear, yes. This is where Oma really shines, isn't it? She brings this calm, sort of scientific sense to it all.
She does. What does she actually say?
Well, she acknowledges the basics. Yes, ragwort has PAs. Yes, they can be toxic, especially in large quantities over longer periods. They can build up, affect the liver. All true.
Okay.
And she agrees bees can visit ragwort flowers. So, in principle, yes, PAs could theoretically get into honey.
There's always a but with Oma, isn't there?
There is. The crucial but is that, in practice, the actual amount that ends up in honey is usually so small that it is not assessed as a health risk.
Right.
She even mentions studies, like from Germany and Holland, where ragwort is actually much more common than it is in Denmark.
And even there.
Even there, the levels found in honey rarely get close to any kind of worrying threshold. Plus, in Denmark, Amma points out, the plant isn't massively widespread. It blooms for a fairly limited period.
And bees don't just stick to one flower.
Exactly. That's key. Honey is almost always a mix of many flower sources. Bees are efficient. They go for what's most attractive and easiest to get to. Ragwort rarely dominates that mix.
So Oma's conclusion is pretty clear then.
Very pragmatic. She basically says one would almost have to eat large amounts of one-sided honey from bees who only had collected from ragwort for it to become a problem, and that, she says, does not happen in reality.
It really puts it in perspective. The dose makes the poison, like you always say.
Precisely.
But this idea of limits or thresholds for these things in food, like PAs in honey, our sources suggest that's actually a bit, messy is the word they use.
It really is. It's not straightforward. Denmark, for example, doesn't have a specific legal limit for PAs in honey because the risk is seen as very low. Germany and Holland, with more ragwort, they have guideline maximums, but even those aren't strictly legally binding laws. They're more like recommendations.
And the EU.
The EU does have limits for PAs, but mainly in things like herbal tea and food supplements. Not specifically in honey, at least not yet. There's a general daily tolerable intake level set by EFS, the European Food Safety Authority, but that's a broad guideline, not a honey-specific rule.
So it's all a bit vague, which probably doesn't help people's anxiety.
Exactly. And that's where Oma's perspective comes back in. She effectively says, look, worrying about minuscule amounts of PA and honey probably isn't the best use of our energy.
Right. What should we worry about instead?
Well, she suggests focusing on things with potentially more significant measurable impacts, like pesticide residues in fruits and vegetables, microplastics in the environment, heavy metals in certain fish, nitrate in drinking water.
Or even, she says, whether one cultivates one's vegetable garden on polluted soil next to a busy road.
Exactly. She argues, It is in those kinds of things that the real and more noticeable health risks lie not in a flower substance from a wild plant that only in rare cases and small quantities can end up in honey. It's about perspective.
A very grounded perspective.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? If the risk is so low, why the huge fuss?
Well, part of it might be how stories get told. Our sources touch on this. The media, especially during cucumber time, that slow news summer period.
Ah, the silly season.
Right. A headline like poison in honey, it's a classic cocktail, isn't it? It grabs attention, plays on emotions, uses half facts and whole gut feelings, gets those clicks.
It's easy to see how that happens.
Yeah.
So what's the antidote to that kind of hype?
The sources suggest something really simple, actually, the best and most grounded solution. Talk to your local beekeeper.
Go local.
Yeah, you don't just get honey, you get insight. You can ask, what are your bees feeding on? What flowers are around here? How do you handle the honey? It builds trust.
Compared to, say, just grabbing the cheapest jar off the supermarket shelf.
Exactly, especially anonymous stuff from outside the EU. The sources are pretty clear.
Yeah.
That's where the risk for both fraud and contaminated product is greatest. Local sourcing gives you transparency.
Makes sense. And this kind of deeper understanding, it seems Kesser and Steen were starting to get that from their Nature and Innovation class, too. Steen was apparently really excited by a new report.
Yes, from Aarhus University. It seems this report added another layer to their understanding, especially about bees themselves.
What did it say? Did it confirm Oma's points about the honey?
It did, essentially. It confirmed PAs are in the leaves, flowers, roots, and pollen of ragwort. But it emphasized that honeybees are primarily after nectar for honey.
And nectar has lower levels.
Generally, yes, and because bees forage so widely, it gets diluted anyway. So the report supports the low-risk assessment for honey, but it also made a really critical distinction.
Which was?
That our honeybees are a form of livestock. We manage them, move them, feed them sugar water sometimes. They're primarily there for honey, wax, and pollinating agricultural crops. Apples, rapeseed, clover, things like that.
Right. They're not exactly wild animals.
No. And many people think bees equal honeybees, but the report highlighted that Denmark alone has over 280 species of wild bees. Think ground bees, fur bees.
Wow. I didn't know there were that many.
Most people don't. And these wild bees are often far more effective and targeted pollinators for native wildflowers and even some crops.
Like bumblebees, maybe?
Bumblebees, yes, but also hoverflies, solitary bees. Many have specialized relationships with certain plants. Some can even do what's called buzz pollination.
Buzz pollination, what's that?
It's like using an electric toothbrush.
Yeah.
They vibrate the flower at a specific frequency to release pollen that's held tightly inside. Tomatoes and blueberries need this. Honeybees cannot do it.
Fascinating. So honeybees aren't always the best pollinators for everything.
Not necessarily, and here's the counterintuitive part. The report suggests honeybees can actually compete with wild pollinators, especially if flower resources are scarce.
Really? So having lots of hives isn't always good for overall nature?
Potentially not. A high number of beehives close to nature can actually displace wild pollinators. It makes you see plants like ragwort differently, too. It's not just good or dangerous. It has functions in the ecosystem. It feeds certain insects. It's part of the food chain. It's about its role in the whole.
That changes things. And Kesser actually put this knowledge into practice, didn't he, with the fennel?
He did. He planted bronze fennel by the tomatoes, not just because it looks nice, but because fennel is like a magnet for hoverflies.
And hoverflies are good guys.
Definitely. Their larvae munch on aphids, and the adults are pollinators. Kesser's simple planting act was supporting that local ecological balance. Small action, big idea.
That's brilliant. And this new awareness, it seems it made them look closer at their surroundings.
It really did. They started noticing the difference on the meadow and the fallow field, seeing where there was lots of activity, places that would buzz like a small power plant, and other spots that were quiet.
Highlighting the need for flowers throughout the season.
Exactly. Variation in flowering throughout the season. And this closer look led them to find something special.
The Sorsic Jeller. Great yellow rattle.
That's the one, Rhinanthus angustifolius. It's not, critically endangered globally, but it's one of those plants that suffers, disappears in silence if its habitat isn't managed right.
What does it look like?
It's quite distinctive, a yellow flower and violet beak. Kesser and Steen acted like proper little field botanists, documenting their find with a photo on ardor.dk, this citizen science platform.
That's fantastic, sharing that local knowledge.
It's exactly how we learn about these subtle changes.
But just as they're celebrating this find, Then comes the circus. The source puts it so dramatically.
Yeah, it represents that hard clash between everyday life and nature's own calendar.
What was the clash here?
Timing. The great yellow rattle flowers precisely in July. If you mow it mid-bloom before it sets seeds, then that's it. A whole generation is wiped out.
And the circus needed the space in July.
Exactly. School holidays, peak season. That specific meadow area was just seen as an available lawn, not as a habitat. The need for surface space trumped the needs of the plant.
Oh no. So what happened to the meadow?
The source describes it pretty grimly. Transformed into a fatty pile of circus remains and a stench of horse piss. What should have been a quiet and species-rich summer meadow wasn't.
And the horses.
The horses, completely unintentionally, got a completely exclusive diet with rattle, bluegrass, and perhaps even bird's foot trefoil and English grass.
Yeah.
A feast of rare meadow plants.
Wow. That's quite an image. The contrast is stark.
It really is. And it perfectly illustrates how human activity, not out of ill will, just inattentiveness, can erase something that took years or decades to arise.
Just carelessness, really.
Often, yes. But the crucial thing here is that Kesser and Steen noticed. They saw it before and they saw it after. They documented it.
And that matters.
Immensely, because, as the source says, if no one notices that something disappears, then it is as if it never existed. But now, they know.
And knowing means they can maybe do something.
Maybe. They can perhaps do something next time. Or just say it out loud. That's often how change starts, isn't it? Just pointing something out.
Like their idea for a sign.
Yeah, putting up a little sign next year. Here blooms something we don't often see, leave it until August. Simple, direct, educational. It starts with seeing, with noticing.
What a journey, really. All starting from that one photo. We went from village, internet drama, and honey fears in Oma's kitchen.
Right through to understanding complex bee ecology.
And ending with the fragility of a rare flower facing off against, well, a circus. It really hammers home how important just paying attention is and thinking critically.
Absolutely. Just noticing what's actually around you, asking questions, checking things out, whether it's talking to Oma or a beekeeper or looking up a report. That's where real understanding starts.
So maybe the question for you, listening, is what hidden stories are unfolding in your own neighborhood, in your local park, or even just outside your window? And what could simply noticing them mean for their future? Something to think about.